Imagine this. Your son or daughter is studying thousands of miles away, getting a world-class education in the US. The last thing you'd expect is an urgent email from their university suggesting they might not, be allowed back into the country if they leave. Let's unpack this surprising situation because that's exactly the predicament facing many international students right now.
Yeah. What's really striking here is how these sort of institutional anxieties are reflecting the vulnerabilities of individuals. Within this shifting political landscape, we're seeing universities take pretty unprecedented steps, actually, to warn their international students about potential disruptions.
Precisely. And this deep dive focuses on some, well, frankly, alarming warnings that American universities have recently felt they had to issue to their international student populations. Our key source for this discussion is a thought-provoking segment from the Ring of Fire on YouTube, which kind of lays out a concerning scenario. The central point is this. Universities are actively advising their foreign students about potential difficulties, not just with re-entering the U.S., but maybe even with staying here. And this seems increasingly connected to the current political climate and maybe unexpectedly, the scrutiny of their online presence.
It makes you wonder about the underlying factors driving these warnings, right? It's not just a general concern. Something specific must be prompting universities to take such definitive action now.
Okay, so let's delve into those specific university warnings. The Ring of Fire segment highlights a couple of significant examples. First, Brown University reportedly sent out an email right before their spring break, so a few weeks before their discussion, basically.
Okay, right before a major travel time.
Exactly. And this wasn't just a casual reminder about travel, safety, or whatever. It was a serious advisory detailing potential shifts in travel restrictions, covering everything from, outright travel bans and changes to visa procedures and processing to evolving reentry requirements and other travel-related delays.
Wow. The sheer breadth of those categories suggests a very wide-ranging concern. They're worried about potential disruptions across the entire spectrum of immigration and travel for these students.
Absolutely. And the email didn't really hold back. It explicitly stated that these potential changes may affect travelers' ability to return to the U.S. as planned. There was even a suggestion of possible issues with domestic travel within the U.S. as federal policy continues to, take shape.
Domestic travel, too. That's interesting.
Yeah. And the quote from the email that was shared is really telling. Apparently, it included the line, "This administration is effing crazy. Please protect yourselves." That kind of raw language really underscores the level of alarm felt, presumably within the university administration.
Wow. That kind of direct, informal language in an official communication, it certainly signals a high degree of urgency. And maybe even a sense of, powerlessness on the part of the institution. It suggests they perceive a very real and unpredictable threat to their students.
Right. It's not the kind of language you typically see from a university unless the perceived risks are, substantial and immediate.
Definitely not.
Then we have Temple University. They also reportedly sent out an email, which was brought to the attention of the Ring of Fire by a colleague. Temple's advice was maybe even more direct, suggesting that international students and scholars currently in the U.S. should strongly consider postponing any international travel plans for the time being. This wasn't just about the possibility of delays. It was a clear recommendation to just stay put.
Okay. The distinction between advising caution and recommending postponement is significant, isn't it? It indicates an even greater level of concern, maybe, regarding the likelihood of successful and timely reentry for Temple's international community.
Exactly. The Temple email specifically emphasized the particular relevance of this advice for those students and scholars who would need to apply for and secure new visas before being able to return to the U.S. That's a really critical point.
Right. If you need a new visa stamp, leaving becomes much riskier in an uncertain climate.
Totally. And for those whose international travel was absolutely unavoidable, the university strongly urged them to consult with qualified immigration attorneys before traveling. They even went a step further and provided a list of pro bono lawyers that students could reach out to for guidance.
Providing pro bono legal resources, that's a really noteworthy step by the university. It shows a tangible commitment to supporting their international students through this. It's a clear sign of how seriously they're viewing these risks.
It really does. And the commentator on the Ring of Fire made a crucial point. These are individuals who have come to the U.S. to study, right? Often paying significant tuition, contributing to the economy.
Hmm.
The fact that universities are now so concerned that these students might be barred from returning if they leave the country, it really speaks volumes about the current climate.
It certainly raises important questions about the perceived stability and predictability of the U.S. immigration system for international students. If these big institutions, which rely on a global student body, feel they have to issue warnings like this, it suggests a noticeable shift compared to, well, previous times.
Now, the situation takes an even more concerning turn when we consider the advice being given not just by the universities, but by immigration lawyers. The YouTube segment shared the experience of a 19-year-old international student. She was preparing to attend Temple University.
Okay.
Through a connection, she spoke with an immigration lawyer, and one of the very first pieces of advice this lawyer reportedly gave her was to ensure that there is nothing on her social media, on any social media account, that could be construed as critical of Donald Trump.
Wow. That's a striking piece of advice, isn't it? It immediately brings up complex issues around, like, freedom of expression and the potential for political viewpoints to actually factor into immigration decisions. Yeah. That suggests a level of scrutiny that, well, maybe wasn't expected before.
Absolutely. And the reasoning behind this advice, according to the source, the Ring of Fire, is the claim that the current administration has reportedly admitted to actively scrubbing the social media profiles of individuals trying to enter the country.
Scrubbing social media.
Yeah. The alleged purpose of this screening is to ensure that only the right ones are admitted, with the implication being that the right ones are those who haven't expressed any criticism of the former president.
The assertion that the administration has admitted to such practices is a significant one. That would certainly represent a notable shift in immigration enforcement, if true. It implies a potentially ideological dimension to screening people coming into the U.S.
Right. And the commentator on the Ring of Fire also mentions that other immigration lawyers have apparently been giving similar advice to their clients. And the concern extends beyond just those seeking initial entry. The broader warning being shared is that if you are currently in the U.S. on any kind of visa, student visa, work visa, whatever, you need to be extremely careful what you say, particularly online. The claim is that the authorities are actively looking for it and will kick you out of the country for it. And the assertion was that these kinds of stories are becoming far too numerous to even cover individually anymore.
That paints a picture of a climate where, well, online expression, particularly political speech, is being closely watched and potentially used as a basis for, like, visa revocation or denial of future entry. The sheer number of these alleged instances, even if it's hard to verify each one, could definitely contribute to an atmosphere of anxiety and, well, self-censorship among international folks in the U.S.
And the advice being given is pretty stark. If you have anything critical posted on your social media, even if it's from years ago, the recommendation is apparently to delete it.
The idea that past online posts may be made in a totally different political context could now jeopardize someone's current visa status. That's particularly concerning, isn't it? It suggests a potentially retroactive application of standards for online speech for visa holders.
Yeah, exactly. So let's bring this back to you, the listener, especially if you have an interest in how politics, society, and, individual freedoms intersect in the real world. What we're seeing unfold here is the very tangible and perhaps unexpected impact of political discourse and policy decisions on the lives and educational dreams of international students who chose to study in the United States.
It really highlights how these big macro-level political dynamics can translate into very personal and significant consequences for individuals. People just trying to pursue their academic goals, broaden their horizons through international education.
The fact that respected universities feel it's necessary to issue warnings like this, and that legal professionals are advising students to essentially self-censor their online presence due to political concerns, it marks a significant shift, doesn't it, in the landscape for international students. It's not the kind of experience one typically associates with studying in the U.S.
No, it challenges that more traditional perception of the United States as, like, a welcoming and open environment for students from all over, where academic freedom and the free exchange of ideas are generally valued principles.
Absolutely. So, to recap what we've kind of uncovered in this deep dive into these university warnings and the legal advice, U.S. universities are increasingly worried about potential difficulties their international students might face trying to get back into the country.
Hmm.
These concerns seem closely tied to the prevailing political climate and a perceived heightened scrutiny of these students' online activities, particularly anything seen as critical of the former president.
Okay, this leads us to a really important question, I think, for you, the listener, to consider. What does it signify when educational institutions and legal professionals find it necessary to advise individuals to monitor and potentially alter their online expression, specifically because of political concerns? What are the broader implications of that kind of advice?
It really makes you think about the bigger picture, doesn't it? What does this mean for principles like academic freedom, for the vital exchange of ideas that thrives on open discourse, and ultimately for the very image of the United States as a destination where global learners can come and flourish without, fear of repercussions for expressing their opinions?
Yeah, as the circumstances for international students continue to evolve, these warnings and the advice being offered really underscore the ongoing need for critical reflection. Reflection on the values we uphold as a society and, well, the message we're sending to the world about who's welcome and what kinds of expression are permissible within our borders.